Hello everyone, welcome to yet another video in this series Python for Beginners. And in this video we are going to start looking at how to install Python. We are going to look at how the Python interpreter works and some of the basic syntax in Python programming language. So without wasting much of your time, let's move to the installation. Now to install the Python interpreter, you need to go to this website, python.org, and then you go to downloads. Now depending on the system you're operating, if you're on Windows you see download for Windows, and if you are on Mac you also go to the Mac link and then click on the download button and then wait for it to prompt you to download. Now you choose your download folder where you want to download the setup and then click save. Now I've already done that long time ago, and now after downloading the setup, the first thing you need to do is to double click on it to install. Now it's going to give you a different prompt. Mine, I've already installed it and I wouldn't want to uninstall and reinstall it again. It's going to give you a different prompt. You follow the instructions and then install. Now one very important thing I needed you to do during the installation, you are going to see an option to add Python, then maybe version 3.9 or whatever, to path. Now this is very important. You make sure you check that option. Now this is to enable you run it from the command prompt. Now you can locate your command prompt by typing cmd, or maybe if you can navigate through it, you go to it. Now to ensure that Python is correctly installed, you need to type Python on the command prompt and then enter. Now if it hasn't shown you anything like this, then it simply means there's a problem with your installation. Now mine is version 3.9.1, but in case it hasn't installed correctly and you have problem with the part, you can use your maybe file explorer and then go to advanced system settings and then environmental variables, and then you click and then manually add it. You write path and then write the installation directory. Now you need to do a little bit of investigation. I'm not going to do that for you. So what exactly is the Python interpreter? Now what is interpreter in the first place? Now there are two kinds of program that translates the source code you write from the very high level language to a machine understandable language. Now these two are compiler and interpreter. Now Python is an interpreter. Now what's the difference between a compiler and interpreter? Now let's say this is your source code. You have written so much code. What an interpreter does is that it will package the code and your scripts, I should say, and during the execution of the program, it will execute it line by line. It will be interpreting it line by line into machine language. But for a compiler, it will have to translate all of this into a machine language before even attempting to execute the program. Now, this one of the major differences. I know you can do further investigation if you want to dig in further into that. But Python is officially an interpreted language, and then the program that translates it from the source code to the machine understandable language is known as the interpreter. So when you install the Python interpreter and then you try to you type Python in your command prompt and it gives you this one. Now it gives you the Python interpreter in an interactive mode. Like for instance, you'll be able to type 5 plus 1 here and it will give you 6. You'll be able to type most Python commands here, and then you are going to get it. Like for instance, you assign a variable, and then by the time you are going to get your answer. So while the Python can be written in an interactive format like this, usually what usually happens is the programmer will write the source code in a file. Now, how do you create a file that you write your source code? You use what we call a text editor. Now, Sublime Text is one text editor, but one default text editor you are going to have when you run your when you are on your Windows, at least for Windows that I know is Notepad. Now you are going to you'll be able to write all your source code here and then save it. Like for instance, you write a is equal to 5, print your input is, and then you write a. Let me close this. Your input is a, and then the next thing you are going to do, make sure you save it with in the directory you wanted to save. Make sure you save it with let's say demo.py. Make sure that this .py extension is added to your file name, and then you save. Now you are going to find it here, demo.py, and then you'll be able to open it with any of the text editors you have. Like the most basic one is a Notepad. Now, for you to run this file, you need to go to, let me exit out of this. You need to navigate to the directory where you save the Python file. Like how you do that is by typing cd and then you type the directory name. You navigate to the directory. Like for instance, from here, you'll be able to navigate to desktop street, and that's where we have the demo.py. Now, to run the file, you need to type Python and then the file name. In our case, is demo.py, and then click enter, and you're going to find your you are going to execute your program here. Now, this is not the only way to actually execute your Python programs. Once you've installed Python and you are sure you have installed it correctly, you can navigate to your start and then go to programs, and you are going to find Python 3.9 or whatever may be your version. Then you are going to look at this IDLE. Python 3.9 64-bit in my own version, and once you click on it, it's going to give you a development environment, integrated development environment, IDE, which you are going to use to edit your code. Now, once it loads the integrated development environment, you can also execute your Python commands in this environment interactively, and sometimes you might create a new file, and then, like for instance, something of this nature, and then you save it and execute directly from here. Like for instance, let me save this one on desktop, demo.py. You can name it whatever you want, and then you click on run, and run module, or you press on F5 button, and then you'll be able. All right, I missed closing comma here. So you run, and then you must save your source code, and it's going to give you the results in the console. Now, this is actually not the only way you can edit your code. While IDLE is cool, I love using it because of its you'll be able to interact. There are other text editors, specialized text editors you can use as well. One of those is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is very sophisticated. Now, all you need to do is to go to code.visualstudio.com, and this IDE is free. You click on download. Depending on your operating system, you can download for Mac, Linux, and mine is Windows. So you click on the download and then select the download folder where you are going to download the setup for Visual Studio Code. There are other plugins you can use and add into Visual Studio Code that is going to help you. So all you need to do is to select the folder. I've already downloaded and installed it, so there's no need for me to do it again. And Visual Studio Code is not the only IDE you use. I also enjoy using Sublime Text. All you need to do is to go to sublimetext.com. It's also free, and this is the one that I actually use in writing most of my Python programs. Sublime Text is a very good IDE. So all you need to do is to download for Windows. Like for instance, if you are on Linux or Mac, you download the version for your own operating system. Select the download folder and then click save. I've already downloaded that, so there's no need for me to do it again. Now, once you have successfully download the setup for the code editor, all you need to do is to double click it and then follow the prompt and correctly install it into your system. I've already installed both Visual Studio Code and Sublime Text, and Sublime Text is the one that I use in building most of my Python applications, while I prefer using JavaScript with Visual Studio Code, though Visual Studio Code is actually very sophisticated, but sometimes I enjoy using Sublime Text. Now, these are some of the text editors you can use while editing your Python source code. You can use the default text editor that comes with your operating system. On Windows, you can use Notepad, and you can use the text editor that comes with your Python installation. That's the IDLE. Is a very good text editor too. You can also use some free text editors such as Sublime Text and Visual Studio Code. And you can use PyCharm, which is a very good text editor for writing Python programs. Now, what does a Python program looks like? Now, unlike your Java, C# or C++ programs, Python is heavily reliant on white spaces. Let me show you what I mean. Like for instance, in Java, you write a function by writing public void, let's say, my function, and then you put an opening and closing curly braces. Then your code goes in between those curly braces. Now, unlike your normal Java programs, the Python program is heavily reliant on white spaces. What do I mean by that? Let's say we create a function in Python, my function, and then now instead of putting an opening and closing curly braces, we will put a semicolon. And don't worry if you don't understand this syntax, as functions and other control structures will be discussed in some subsequent videos. Now, you put a colon and then press enter. Now, if you are on text editor such as Sublime Text, it will automatically indent it, and then this is where you begin to write your code. This is a way that shows that the code being written in this place is actually part of this function. Now, by the time you exit and begin to write your code from this side, now that simply means the code is no longer a part of this function, or maybe if it is a control structure such as loop and the rest. So Python is heavily reliant on white spaces. You are going to need indentation. If you are on something like Notepad, you need to press the tab key to find the right indentation. Now, for instance, let's write a simple program that determines whether you are young or adult in Python. Like, for instance, let's say my function, and then we'll put a colon here, and then we'll now capture a variable, we'll create a variable. And don't worry if you don't understand most of these things. We are going to discuss what functions, variable, expressions, and the rest in our subsequent video. So let's say this is a variable that we'll be able to use to capture the age input from the keyboard. So we'll capture an input. It will capture, maybe you put in a number, and then it will capture it and store it on this variable. Then we'll check if age is less than 18. If age is less than 18, then we'll need to indent once more. Again, just like the way we indented on this function, we created this function and we put a semicolon, and then we created an indentation once, and that is how we determine if a particular code belongs to a control structure or a function. Now, in the case of this control structure, if age is equal to 18, this indented code will be executed. If age is equal to 18, we'll simply print to the console and we'll say you are not an adult. That is if age is equal to is less than 18, sorry. And else we will print you are an adult. So this is as simple as it is. If age is equal to 18, then we will need to indent once more. If you're on Notepad, you will need to press the tab key. But for Sublime Text, it will sometimes give you automatically. So else, then it will execute. Now this block of code will only execute if age is greater than or equal to 18. This else, and then this if age is less than 18, this block of code will only execute. So this is how we know if a code belongs to a specific control structure or a function or whatever by indentation. Unlike the normal Java or C++ programs that sometimes we will need to open curly braces and then put our code in between. Now, one last important thing before we finish this this particular video is the fact that if you are writing a Python program and you wish to extend your command to the next line, like for instance, this command ends here, right? At this very place. By the time you press enter, it's going to be a new command. Now, but if you wish to extend a specific command to the next line, maybe it's becoming too long, then you need to do something. Like for instance, if you are operating on a value map, you have a value map like this. Let's say, don't worry if you don't understand the structures, we will discuss them. Let's say name is John Doe, and then age, let's say 30, and then you have a comma. Now, if this brace is not yet closed, you can still extend the command to the next line and then put something like, let's see, location, and then we'll put Africa. And by the time you decided to print A, your result will still be intact. Like for instance, look at it here. But if you remove this comma, then you are going to have an error. So let me put it back. And sometimes, even if you want to extend a command that is not a dictionary, or maybe doesn't have an opening and closing brace, you may wish to use the backslash character. Let's look at this. For instance, let's say 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, and you wish to print this one in a loop. Like for instance, let's say for I in, instead of writing for I in A, let's do it this way. For I in A, then you print I. Now it's going to print all the numbers within this list, but maybe let's assume that this command has extended so long that you want to extend it to the next line. If you put it this way, you are going to have an error. So what you will need to do is to put a backslash here if you wish to extend your command to the next line. Now, by putting a backslash, it will extend the command to the next line, and you'll be able to execute your commands. So far, this is what we have for this video. If you have not subscribed to this channel, make sure you do so. We are going to see you in the next video, where we'll start discussing some of the control structures and some of the syntax, the specific syntax that you use in writing your Python program. Thanks for listening.